Hopefully you can hear me. So to give you a context about my presentation today, it's a paper that I wrote for a special issue in a Journal of Economic Geography about uneven geography of standards, application of standards across the world in different areas. My paper that was submitted, the deadline was this Sunday at 12, and I submitted it at 7 minutes earlier. I read it and reread it a few times on
It's fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh, and it's still a draft. So I assume that if it's going to be published as part of the special issue, it's going to have to be modified a lot. So I welcome any comments, and I take into consideration that probably as it goes in academia, it have to be submitted somewhere else. So it's a fresh work, so that we really appreciate to get all comments and ideas and remarks and everything that you can do to give feedback. My contribution to the special issue, my proposed contribution, is to speak about the uneven application of real estate valuation standards between West Jerusalem, which is, for the sake of the argument, a neoliberal market that works according to the forces of supply and demand with developers, etc. So-called normal neoliberal market, and the occupied East Jerusalem real estate market, which is, again, for the sake of the argument, the informal markets that have completely different logics than the logic of West Jerusalem. We're going to see more. But before I start, sorry for my context images are not in English. I couldn't find any publication in English about these issues. So I'm just going to give you a small context about standards and real estate valuation. The first real estate valuation standards in Israel were issued at around 2006. Before then, there weren't any official guidelines about how to conduct valuation. It's very interesting to study what were happening, but it's basically a lot of unwritten laws and agreements between different sides. The standards were issued only in 2006. I just, as part of writing this paper, I interviewed the head of the standard committee, and he said that he told me a lot about how they developed it. And basically, the inspiration for the Israeli standards were the American Fannie Mae Bank, which is a mortgage bank, standards. So they translated it from the English version, American version, to Israel, with obviously a lot of modification that were needed as naturally for a local situation, for the local market. And they issued 21 standards. We're going to go through them quickly in a few slides. We start working for the committee that works, the Israeli Standard Committee started functioning in 2014. And basically for 10 years, nothing happened. And there is a lot of politics about it, a lot of interesting story why it stopped. Some other bodies tried to issue fake standards, and it was a lot of debates in courts about that. Just a few weeks ago, which is very random, that it's just exactly now, the committee, they installed the committee, and now they're going to rewrite the entire, all the standards again. So it's something that actually happens now.
What is the legal status?
there isn't such. It's very complicated. It's basically just suggestion. So you can always write as they do in East Jerusalem, as we're going to see, that we weren't able to follow the standards, so we didn't do it. But obviously, as if you look, they cannot really ignore them. So they have a soft legal status of being very important. Basically, everybody follows them unless they don't follow, and then they directly explain why not. But legally, there is no. It's not necessary. You have other bodies, the banks require them, etc. So you have other enforcement mechanisms that are not legal. On the same time, you have a body that is called the IVS, International Valuation Standards, which is an NGO, is based in the UK, and they have developed international valuation standards that are quite similar in most senses to the Israeli one, but they're still different. And it's part of a big organization that has its own laws. You have to renew the standards every 3 years. This is the main reason why, according to the head appraiser, the Israeli head appraiser, they didn't adopt it yet because they don't want to renew it every 3 years. And also because they deal a lot with environmental standards, and now they deal with standards of AI appraising. So the Israeli Ministry of Law was not that enthusiastic about adopting them, but it's something that, again, 2 weeks ago, this headline for the non-Hebrew speakers, the head of the Appraiser Association met the main committee of the IVS, and Israel is about to join the IVS.
IVS stands for?
International Valuation Standards. Thank you. So it happens now. I really find this image funny. They just met like 2 weeks ago in the middle of all the happenings here in Israel, and they treat it as business as usual. The aim of joining the IVS is attracting foreign investment for the Israeli real estate market. So there is a big lobby for that. A lot of interesting discussions why it's going to be good for all of us if we have a lot of foreign real estate investors. We can speak about it later, but you have for example, they want investors to develop long-term letting properties. So it's not something that anyone is doing in Israel. And big companies do that abroad, and they won't invest in Israel unless they have, it's not enough, but they must have some kind of standards that they can trust. So
for those who are with us from abroad, we are laughing because the real estate prices in Israel, even after the crisis, are soaring, and of course, attracting more investor of real estate will increase the price further.
Yeah, but some of them argue that it's not. So I had long conversation with the Israeli representative to the IVS, and he thinks, and he have a point that it's gonna help reduce the prices.
Why? Because of extra competition at the level of investors, or
because the main thing that he wants to attract is for long-term letting.
Rental.
Yeah, rental. This is how so short, long-term rentals,
okay,
which is a product that we don't have in Israel.
There is a big cluster when you come from the to Haifa on building, but I saw that more precisely on building
On the
Tachana.
you have a very few,
yes,
but mostly they are very expensive. It's not something that is, they plan to build like 50,000, 100,000 units. And now they have already issued, like they authorized the planning, but no Israeli investors wants to do that. This is part of the thing, but it's okay. So basically, they agreed on joining the IVS. This picture is for 10 days ago, something like that, just so months ago. Yeah, okay, sorry. I just remember it was a very bad day security-wise, and then we had this news. It was very random. It's business as usual. So they went in one direction. This is from a few days ago. That they announced that IVS committee were created, and they're gonna start working on translating the IVS standards. You can see here, this was something that personally people did, appraisers in 2017. It just translated the standards, the IVS, the international standards, to Hebrew. Just to have them in Hebrew, you can find them. Horrible translation, similar to Jerusalem Post translations in some senses, but it's there. So there is a big institutional project of the Israeli government, Ministry of Law, trying to adopt these international standards. And in the meanwhile, you have the Israeli standards, who also are being renewed now, and they are kind of correlate. Let's see the standards, kind of correlate. There is basically minor, it's only about the authority of the standards that's really going to change if they're going to adopt the IVS. It's not, nothing really going to change the market. Maybe they're going to have to take into consideration some environmental issues that they don't want, but this is basically it.
Just looking, the association is a voluntary association.
IVS. Yeah.
No, the Israeli one. Yeah, it's not like the legal profession. It is organized by law.
No, but you have the head of treasury in the Ministry of Law, and he's the one who is promoting the IVS. So like it's a shared project.
The profession and
yeah, so they're doing it together. The profession is like pushing, but the one who has to decide and basically decided is the head appraiser, the governmental head appraiser. This is just a quick view of the standards. We're going to talk in length about standard 2 and standard 4. It's basically very, for me, they are fascinating, but for every other human being, it's very boring instruction on how to do valuations. Standard 21, I'm sure all of you know standard 21.
What is?
No? Okay.
I can't read.
Standard 21 is a standard for urban renewal. So decides, now it's changed a bit, but decides that 25% profit for urban renewal projects.
Right.
So it's very highly politicized. There is a lot of discussions about it. Every few years, they declare that they're going to cancel it, and then that you have to take advantage of it very, very quickly. If not, you're going to lose it.
Explain it to us in simple language. What does it mean, 25%?
I can recommend the paper that was just published about that a month ago. If you invest $100 million in a property, so the return should be 125, which means that as a developer, you need to earn 25% of what you invested. It's not that you have to make a profit of 25% of your investment.
That's the limit, or
what do you mean by have to? Is it the bottom line or is it the limit?
This is my PhD, basically. I'm following this number ethnographically, and I see how it dictates. It's not clear.
But what did they intend? For it to be bottom line or limit?
It's not clear. Basically, it's a bottom line, but it also become a limit. But what is interesting that there is a lot of way to decide what is 25. So when you issue a plan, when you authorize the construction of a building, you need to authorize it in a way that will make sure that that the developer is gonna earn 25%. So you construct, you design the number of apartments, the size of each apartment, everything that is connected to the planning have to go into a table of costs and revenues that have to be at the end 25. If it's 40, then it means that the developer earns too much, then they're gonna ask the developer to do other stuff to reduce the number, so they can negotiate, to build the park. So
Who's they?
the councils. And in Tel Aviv, which I studied, is
You mean the municipalities?
yeah. In I guess in poorer regions, it's the region.
The regional council.
Regional council.
Okay, so regional councils and local councils.
I'm totally so let me ask stupid people question. This is standard for evaluating property.
No, this is a standard for approving urban renewal projects. If the council,
IVF.
No, that's only 21 he's talking about.
yeah, but it's not that I'm talking about 21, but it's not that important.
No.
That's the context.
I want to buy this room.
Okay.
Okay. And the question is how an evaluator will evaluate.
Yeah.
And I thought the standards
The
actually
standards.
dictate, the way that people put evaluations. So I thought that urban development means that if a new cable car will be built just here, and it will increase the level of this, the price of this room. So there is some kind of.
But that's urban development, not urban renewal,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, but it's not necessary for the story here.
Okay.
I'm focusing on two standards. Standard number 2, which we're going to talk about in a second, is just how many comparables you have similar properties. You find similar properties, and then you say this, and this are similar to the properties that I'm evaluating. So this is why my property value is this, because it's like this, but it's a bit different.
Do you have a margin to cannot know the price or the initial price according to a certain margin when you do those comparisons?
Yeah. So you find
20% or something like that?
it's changing. It's not usually you don't look for 20% because you have. In a second, we're going to talk about that. But you find how do you find the similar properties? This is the instruction in standard number 2. They have to be what does it mean similar? Basically, similar have to be in a specific distance from the properties that you value. The dates that it was sold have to be up to 2 years. It have to be the same number of rooms, etc. This is very simple standards. Standard number 4 is even more simple. It's just how to identify the property. How is as we're gonna see very soon, you don't always evaluate the correct property. So I heard also in other places, but basically mostly in East Jerusalem, how to identify property. So you look at this registry of the Ministry of Law, you look at these maps, and you have to visit. So, yeah, standard 21, which is just an example. I put it here because I thought everybody gonna know it, but
Apparently.
No.
Where does the valuation steps in? You have valuations when you approve the plan, and you have valuation when we are going to buy property.
It's a question for later. You have every moment in life, you have a specific valuation for. When many.
You said you want to buy, you want to invest.
Okay. And also when you want to approve a plan that changes the values of the property, right?
Yeah. Ask me that at the end. It's not clear. Okay. we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm zooming out and just talking generally about standards. And if we put in mind the IVS and the Israeli standards and the critical literature about standards that I was referring to in my article have four main assumptions. So first thing is discussion about standard producers and standard takers.
Are takers users?
Takers are users, but it's not really users. No. So producers are the
Right.
no. The producers are the institutions that create the standards.
Okay.
Which usually are from the global north, from rich places, who has the power and the ability to force their needs on the entire world. So if we talk about ISO, the International Standard Organization, they create a lot of standards, and they usually fit rich countries. We have a discussion now in Israel about adopting the European standards. Because why would we need Israeli standards? It's a big topic now for products. For products, not only for products. No, not only for products. A lot of them are, it's called product standards and process standards. So when you examine if a building is strong enough, you have to examine the concrete, for example, it's a process standard. Also real estate valuation standards or process standards, both. So standard takers are the ones that have to adjust to the standards. They can decide and they don't use it, or they have to adjust their way of life, their market, whatever it is, to the standards, because if not, they're not going to be able to be part of the international system. If they produce, for example, in China, they have to produce according to the standards. They can't just produce according to their own standards, etc. And what the literature talks about is that the so-called standard takers, the weak side, needs to invest a lot of resources to make adjustments. So mostly the standards fit the strong. Obviously, it's more complicated than that, but this is my version of that.
I mean, in China, they can build the building that will collapse.
Give it 3 years.
Not necessarily. I mean, multiculturalism in the field of building. This is
It also talks about the part of colonization processes forcing standards on under standardized areas. So it's my paper challenged that, so we don't have to be upset already.
challenging.
It's primarily, it includes safety standards. I mean,
you have a cost and a cost and revenue table always in this kind of industrial manners. So you can go to the maximum safety, and then you lose a lot of values that you can extract from whatever. And if you have a lot of people who are dying of hunger,
but why is it colonization? I mean,
there is a vast literature. I can recommend very good books about how, for example, World Bank goes to a market somewhere and forces the standards. So all the industry have to change.
That I understand. But why colonization? I mean, how does it relate to colonization?
This is colonization.
It's related to colonization.
It's an overuse of the word, I think.
It's okay.
That's the literature at the moment.
But it's at the moment. Yeah.
The concept.
No, it's a lot of you have a lot of very interesting works about India how they changed,
Right.
it's not only contemporary works, it's a lot about post World War II when these systems developed. So it's okay.
Is it colonization because some rules from external rules are applied?
That's
Or is it colonization because some people will be from
right.
that are not native, let's say, will come because of the standard, which is not the same degree of colonization.
Yeah.
So you can
See,
say
India makes
economic
sense
colonization. Okay, yeah, it's a good point.
It's not the same.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree. I was looking at the Israeli-Palestinian example in East Jerusalem, so I would argue that it is a force of example of colonization, but it's
both
not
ways. Actually, this is the point. Yes, exactly. Both ways. Yeah.
But again, it's not just the general context. The main issue is that there is a very fine divide between those who produce, who take advantage of the standards, and those who have to adapt, who are being used by the standards, and this creates a world system of rich and poor, or whatever you want to call it. In most journals, in Journal of Economic Geography, I hope I'm not stops recording for a second, they call it, they talk about colonization processes. But I agree that it might be overused. So now the cases that I'm going to talk about are, as I said, standard number 2, standard number 4. What is interesting is that they are being applied. East Jerusalem was annexed after 1967, means that the Israeli law applied to all that area, even though the 300,000 total residents are not citizens, they have just residency permit in Israel. But real estate valuation-wise, officially, they are under the exact same laws of the laws in West Jerusalem. So you have the exact same regulation, exact same standards that apply for both areas in a completely different situation.
And to the Israeli Association, and therefore, and it is enforced through the banks and stuff. This is in a way how it affects.
Actually,
Who says that, right?
in 1990. My father was the appraiser of the Jerusalem municipality, so I know it from the first case. People from West Jerusalem sued the municipality for not applying the same standards on East Jerusalem. Because if you don't do it equally, you cannot charge taxes from us. So basically, the municipality was
taxation,
yes.
It influences all those things.
Yeah. So they didn't really want to, and just
the municipality.
Yeah, but they were forced to treat everybody as equals.
That's a really, in that sense, this is really a sentence that we need to diagnose later, right?
So this is a map of Jerusalem, and you can see on the right East Jerusalem, and on the left West Jerusalem. And nice. I can look at it for hours. As I said, a small break, so just a few images from East Jerusalem. This is the Shafat refugee camp. It's all. This is not part of what is, even though it's part of Jerusalem formally, and they should apply the laws there, they don't do it.
Can you explain a few words what we see here? The high-rise buildings are in East Jerusalem?
Yeah, it's in a Shafat refugee camp. So they've been just built informally without any approval, without any authorization, without any proper inspections.
It's part of the municipality of Jerusalem?
Legally, it's part of the municipality of Jerusalem. Officially, 2005, they built a wall and they separated it. And the municipality doesn't really provide any services there. So it's kind of a no man's land in a sense. There is no valuation. So okay, you have a very few, that's not the one that we're going to talk about now. Ask me at the end if you want. So,
So the wall is between two different neighborhoods, right? What's on one side and what's on the other? What is the difference? The complicated.
can go back
Behind
to
the wall,
map.
it's in a way the West Bank side of the wall, although this neighborhood is part of Jerusalem and part of Israel officially, but it's behind the wall, meaning it's on the other side of the wall from if you're looking from Israel.
We can.
Although
It's like this.
legally it's part of Israel. Annex
Yeah.
is part of it. Under Israeli law, under municipality,
It's
under
part of
everything.
Jerusalem,
It's part of
Yeah.
Jerusalem,
but it's
legally,
separated by
but
the
not
separation
physically.
wall, and therefore the Jerusalem municipality doesn't provide any
Right.
services there. I don't know if they collect tax there.
No,
They
no.
do.
No.
Part of why is it high-rise building? Because they want to have their
No.
yes, part of it. It's like how they are proving their status as residents.
No, not there.
Not there, so why high-rise buildings?
But many people are very, very.
No.
But no, it's just informal high rise. You don't have space. You just build it.
לא. זה יש ספציפיות
I can recommend a very good paper, Vertical Informality, that interviews the developers who build those.
The main problem with
אוקיי, נדבר על זה, כי אני יודעת.
the main problem with these buildings are not the valuation.
No, it's just an image for rest.
But the
I
fact
should rest now. Not stay.
they were built not, bypassing the building standards, and therefore all these high rises will collapse.
Instantly.
Very small earthquake, and even not by earthquake, but we can collapse.
You have lots of images, videos every year for these areas being flooded. Completely crazy. It's like big disasters with people dead every year.
Who's getting permits?
No permission.
No permits.
But
There is no
this is not where my study focuses. This is behind the wall. This is other areas. It's just the illustration image. This is like more. This is a neighborhood called Isawia, just next to the Jerusalem University, Hebrew University. And this is more how it looks like. It's a lot of villages. Some of them are more developed, and some of them mostly unauthorized construction. This is also part of that. So one side is Israel, one side is not considered Israel. We have a wall that separates. So the study was based on 38 interviews with Palestinian Jewish appraisers, which either represent the Jerusalem Council, municipality, or arbitrators. The Jerusalem municipality hired one Palestinian appraiser now. But basically all of the other ones are Jewish, and there's non-Arabic speakers is the important thing. Analysis of 100 of arbitration reports, protocols, and I joined. Everything is in Zoom now, so it was very easy to join and follow legal cases, like arbitration cases in Israeli property arbitration.
Arbitration in place when the authorities are involved. If I want to buy privately property, I can take an evaluator. You can take an evaluator.
If you don't need the bank, yeah, you can.
You get back. Okay, great.
Basically, most of the valuations that we speak about are betterment tax valuation. When somebody, in 1995, they issued a law that allows for everybody to, there are no general plans in East Jerusalem, so you cannot build according to a general plan like West Jerusalem, but you can plan privately for your own property, and pay for it, a lot of money. And then when the plan is being authorized, if you want to construct the properties that you were allowed to construct, you need to pay 50% of the value increase taxes. It's called betterment taxes. You have a few hundred of those in East Jerusalem every year. For it's a city of 300,000 people, it's like bigger than Haifa. So 300-400 is not a lot. But this is
Masjid.
no, Masjid is something else. But it's still 10 times more than what it used to be 10 years ago. So 400 is, a few hundred is quite a lot. Okay, so standard 2, as I said, is the purpose of the standard is to instruct appraisers how to conduct proper valuation. They have 3 approaches: the comparable sales approach, cost approach, and income approach. Comparable sales is just looking for comparable sales. Cost approach is how much it would cost to construct the property. So you have the price of the land, how much it would cost to buy the land, and how much it would cost to build. It's not as reliable, and they try not to use it if they can. And the income approach is how much you can earn. Basically, it's more for businesses, how much you can rent the property. That's the least reliable approach. All 3 approaches are based on comparables. And the definitions that I gave to comparables in the paper in similar properties used as benchmark to determine the value of the property being appraised. And the standard instruct you how to do that, how to find similar properties. So you have 4 stages: accessing a database, selecting items from the database, and constructing the average local value. Stop me if it's confusing. Adjusting values based on unique property features and market conditions, and integrating multiple valuation findings into a coherent final assessment.
Where I asked my question about the market.
So it's number 3. So you
adjust, but you can be on the maximum, and then endogenously you create a higher prices. That's what I mean.
Yeah, or lower. Depends which size you are, if you are a client or a government. When I did my PhD about Tel Aviv, it's very simple. So you have the tax authority database, which is just an online system that you can see all property transactions in Israel. You click the name of the street, and you find all properties that were sold in the last 2 years. And if you look at the random street in Tel Aviv, you find hundreds or many. And then you have to choose what you think are the best 3 or 4 or 5. If you want to reduce the value, if you want to form a small low value, you're going to take the 5 that fits you. If you want to take, to charge taxes and you're from the municipality, you're going to find another 5. Most of them are similar. You don't take something that is completely random. You push it a bit to your side. And then if you go to these arbitration rooms, you see that they fight about what is similar and what is not. This is 4th floor, this is 3rd floor, it should be 2nd floor, and all this, and somehow they form an agreement. Basically, they have a lot of data, and the value is what the discussion is which data is better, what is more similar to the properties that is being valued. So the first stage is accessing a database. Basically, in West Jerusalem, as well as all other parts of Israel, you have the Israeli tax authorities database. You have a lot of interesting politics about it. It was opened only in 2008. Before that, it was only open to, you need to have connections. You could pay around 100 shekels for one inquiry. It was very different professions. All their appraisers talk about, being a good appraiser before 2008 was being able to get this data. After that, it was open to everybody, and the entire profession changed. Other than that, you have contracts, just contracts like the real data to see how much people paid actually for if you trust the contracts. You have supply prices, which is like the prices in websites that properties are being offered on sale. You have tenders, government tenders for land, etc. In East Jerusalem, you have none of those. So in West Jerusalem, you have this very complex and interesting and working database. In East Jerusalem, I'm quoting from an official arbitration. This is like an official document of the Israeli government, and they say, as is well known in the Arab sector of Jerusalem, contracts and reports to the tax authorities are lacking and do not constitute a reliable evidentiary basis for property values. So there are no reports, very, very few reports. If people do reports, then there is no system to actually check if the reports are reliable or not. You have a lot of variables, size, the exact size of the house, different parts of the house. They don't go inside. So nobody trusts the reports. And they don't use them. Like, it's non-functioning. I talked to a senior tax authorities appraiser, and he told me that it's just too much resources for them to go and go to East Jerusalem and try to force the database. I'm quoting, it's better for us to go to a big company like Teva and audit them, and we're going to get more money back than actually trying to organize the database in East Jerusalem. So there is no reports, nobody trusts the data, and basically what you hear from everybody, and at the beginning of my research, it was quite amazing. Now I'm used to it. Everybody says that we don't have data, we don't know anything. Appraisers ask me as a researcher to help them find out. They talk about using the security forces to find out. It's like a big mystery, big secret, nobody knows. So second, selecting items from the database. This is the second stage. So in West Jerusalem, it's very complicated task. Again, I can refer you to the PhD. It's based on intuition. You have different intuitions, what is similar, what is not. Type of valuation, what you want to evaluate for which purpose, what your interest, if you're from this side or the other, etc., etc. It's a very complicated system of how to choose from the database the items that are fit. In East Jerusalem, they don't have database, so they cannot choose. What they do, they copy and paste from all the arbitration reports. So if you go to any evaluation, you see that they say we don't know what to do, we have no data, so we copied from another report, another arbitration, another verdict that was conducted a year ago. if you go to that verdict, you see that they say again, and they can do it. So it goes way back. Yeah. They have other systems. Sometimes they compare to West Jerusalem. So they can tell you things like, I know it's not going to be that expensive because the prices in the Jewish neighborhood are not as expensive, and the property in East Jerusalem cannot be as expensive as in West. They have like tricks, but basically they copy all the data from each other. It's like a circle. Everybody knows that. You go to a verdict and it's openly stated. If you go to the official journal of the appraisers, they actually had an editorial about that, and that they should be ashamed of themselves that they do it. It's open secret. They just copy. Then the adjusting value. So I said you set a standard meter based on comparables, and then you adjust it to the specific property. So you can say the value in this street is 1,000 shekels, but this house is older, is the neighbors are bad, or whatever, so we're going to reduce 10% or add 10%. This has a big yard, so we're going to whatever. So again, in West Jerusalem, it's very complicated tasks that for me took 18 months of following the process to understand how they think, how they adjust. It's very unique behavior. In East Jerusalem, there is no information, so there are no changes, basically. They just skip. They do have changes. They do always, if you look at arbitrations, they always find a reason to reduce, but it's very small. So they can make some small arguments. This house is next to a hill, we can take a bit, but it's minor. It's almost insignificant, this stage. I'm just going to read it quickly. No, if we don't have time. The fourth stage is, after the third stage, you always have a lot of valuations because each side has a different value, and then you have usually a legal proceedings that unifies them, take all the different numbers and makes them into one number in the arbitration courts or in another place. So again, in West Jerusalem, it's debated, and there's a lot of discussion of this unifying stage is very critical stage, and you have a lot of politics behind that. Basically, everybody knows that the arbitration gonna somehow decide, choose a value in between. So the sides take it into consideration before, and I repeatedly heard people telling me, I think that the value is 10,000, but I'm gonna say 12,000 because I know that the arbitrator gonna take it down, and you have a lot of place how to operate the system. In East Jerusalem, again, you copy and paste. It's very boring, but you just copy and paste the same numbers. So you have a very little place for discussion. Again, it's see here, it's a Palestinian appraiser explaining that the official taxes bills from the Jerusalem Council state that the cost per meter is 900 shekels. However, based on my own evaluation, I believe it to be 3,000 shekels. So he knows the market. He knows that it's actually 3 times more than what the Jerusalem Council asks. As an appraiser, but the Jerusalem Council just copy. They don't have data. So he has like some kind of magical access. They don't have it. So they think it's 900. As an appraiser, my primary objective is to minimize the betterment tax bills for my clients. Therefore, I will declare the cost per meter to be 700. So, and then they fight either 900 or 700, but it's very small fights, which the real number is 3,000. But whatever it means, the real number is 3,000.
One would expect exactly the opposite.
This is what
This is the point.
this is the.
Okay, explain later why. in the Q&A.
Okay, so standard 4 is designed to provide comprehensive guidance on how to identify and inspect the value property, etc. So in West Jerusalem, basically visiting properties is the most important thing in valuations. You talk for a second with every appraiser, you're going to hear urban legend about how somebody appraised the wrong place, how they missed the big construction on the top of the buildings because they haven't been there, they didn't see it. Everybody have this scary story about lying that we've been at the property, and you don't do that. And you can be sued if you do it in Tel Aviv. You're going to be sued for millions if they find out that you actually haven't been in the property. It's very, very basic practice. In East Jerusalem, so in 2016, there was an official directive from the government's deputy legal advisor that officially permitted appraisers not to visit because it was too dangerous. It was one of the rounds. And back then it was only region in Israel with such a permission. Interesting because now the entire northern border also have this permission. So you have valuations in Kiryat Shmona, and they extended this East Jerusalem permission to those areas, which is quite thought-provoking. So most of the appraisers, or a lot of them, just don't visit. They don't see the properties. They don't go to visit. They either use the most typical method is just to ask the Palestinian appraisers of the residents to take videos, and then they send it to the sites, and you have like satellites or things like that. And they don't visit the property. Some of them do visit, but they do it very, very quickly. They almost never go into the property. They just look from outside and they just go very quickly, and they don't really see the area. So I'm gonna read you this quick story, or okay, I'm gonna tell you that because it's gonna be clearer. An arbitrator told me that she's like a very experienced arbitrator. She knows the place, and she insisted that they're gonna go to the property. So you have two sites. You have the Jerusalem municipality appraiser who issued betterment tax bills, and you have the Palestinian appraiser who responded, and then they found themselves in the arbitration process. And then the arbitrator asked them to go to see the property. The entire discussion before the visit was about the prices of building on a slope, because it was a street with a slope and the house was on the slope and they had to dig, whatever, something like that, and how much you have to pay extra if you build on a slope. Then they went to the property and they discovered that the house is in the other side of the street. So there is no slope, and the entire process, we have an official document by the Jerusalem municipality with a picture of the house that was the wrong house. And then you have the response from the appraiser of the Palestinian resident, but he was also a Jewish Israeli, who responded to the council claim, but again, he didn't visit it, and he was responding about the wrong property. So she said, I'm ashamed, and if you read the arbitration verdict, you don't see that. So she said, I didn't want to hurt them, so I'm just... Another story is when you don't visit the property, it's very typical, unfortunately, in East Jerusalem. So they added extra value because it was just open view, the last house in the neighborhood. What they didn't see because they didn't visit is that it's just on the garbage and unofficial garbage dump. And he says, one of the residents appraiser says, it was clear to me that the municipality appraiser hadn't been there. I didn't reveal it because I didn't want him to harm him personally. But he just attached the picture of the garbage dump, and you hear a lot of these stories about noise, garbage dump. Just if you don't visit, you don't see them.
I think there is a gate of the garbage in the city.
Yeah, but it's not the old city. It's it's just random. Yeah, okay. And then you have more extreme stories about actually places who try to visit there but are in risk of being attacked. Because they're afraid, and some of the visits are with armed police. You have a lot of these kind of stories. And then they obviously don't really visit inside the inner parts of the property, which are. So I summarize it here. No visits means they don't know, they can't verify the existence, they don't understand the operational capabilities of the building, the surrounding, they can't discuss with owners. It's a very, very big deal for the valuation. And if you connect it to the application of standard 2, it obviously fits because usually they just copy from other valuations. They don't really need to visit just to copy. And so the initial findings is that this uneven application, when you've seen that there are completely different application in West and East Jerusalem, that unlike all other Israeli courts, that's not hard to check what
Goes
happened.
to their benefit.
If you look at it simply, you see that the Palestinian win. So the municipality asks for 1,000, and then they say 600, and they win.
They win some, so 800, so 800 now.
But it's this is a game. They're always able
Instead
to.
of 3,000.
No, the 3,000 is another issue. They always win if you check what was the demand of the
I
municipality.
understand, but the actual value is much higher than that, and still there, but it's comparing.
No. So they win, they pay much less than the actual value, which is a different story. What does it mean, actual value? Let's not open that. But what everybody agrees that the fair share should have been 3,000, and they paid 1,000.
Right.
But the municipality asked for 1,000, and they also win, and they pay less. So they're like twice. So
Right.
they win against the market, and they win against.
More than West Jerusalemites?
Yeah, it's very significant. Yeah, it's always. It's a different.
Yeah, no, I think it's some, okay, I think there are.
They definitely
assumptions
win against
that-
the market better than West Jerusalem.
Yeah, but I'm thinking really arbitration wise, but then arbitration.
It's a-
Minor thing.
It's a counter-colonialism.
No, I think it's the assumption that it can't be so high. I wonder what.
I'm
is
not
it
sure.
that
Actually,
goes-
it's an interesting. I think the trend is quite similar. It's a good point. Remind me that the trend, so I write it. I'm not sure that against the first valuation they win. It's much, but if you compare it to other courts in which other official courts in which Palestinians go to be tried, even real estate courts, you have a specific real estate court in Jerusalem for unauthorized construction, so they always lose. Everything that they do is unauthorized, and they always 99.9% of the time they lose. Here it's opposite. 99% of the time they win. And if you want a more colorful description of a Jewish appraiser, he says we are being taken advantage of in the most grievous way, but we have no means to fight back. We are left with no data, no contract, and no information. Everyone is suffering as a result, including the Jerusalem Council, the Israeli tax authorities, and the Israeli National Insurance. Palestinians are able to construct large complex and pay significantly less in taxes than a Jewish person would pay for a simple renovation, such as converting a balcony into a room. This is a form of reverse discrimination. So this is how they treat it.
But this is one interview. I wonder.
No, it's completely consistent in all 40 interviews, and as you can see, in all arbitration verdicts, and you have a discussion about it in professional appraising.
So the debate around Almana are totally different, but different texts. So
yeah, Almana is completely different tax. You don't need the appraiser for Almana. Yes, but I'll ask you about it in a second.
Afterwards, because we want to.
So when they try to explain why the Jewish appraiser, okay, we are losing. Why would we collaborate with this system? We're being taken advantage of, etc. This is from an official appraising verdict. From official verdict, it's an official document by the Israeli government, and they say, I concur that the majority of arbitration reports rely on estimates rather than actual data. So appraising is supposed to be a scientific practice. This is how they treat themselves. So they have a method, as they show, very rigorous, and they construct the values in a semi-scientific, like economy. It's supposed to be based. It's supposed to be true. It's not supposed to be something that they do because it's not justice like a normal legal system. It's supposed to be evidence-based. But they say estimates rather than actual data. So they admit in an official document that it's not true. You would never find it in any other arbitration. Due to the limited number and poor quality of tax authority reports, nevertheless, the transparency of these arbitration reports being accessible to the public outweighs their potential inaccuracies. The crucial factor is that they are subject to scrutiny, maintain a level of fairness, and are widely known, which ultimately establish validity in regard to the expected property tax assessment collected from local landowners. So they admit that this is not the real value, that they don't follow the expert practice that they should follow, that they basically invent a value or do whatever they can, take as high as they can with no data. But they do it because they want the Palestinians, they want to create a market. This is part of what I'm talking about colonizing. So they want to enforce the local population under the regulation.
So they lower the standard in order that they will go in
and then they create some standards, some values that can be used afterwards.
But then I think colonization again.
You concluded?
Yeah.
So,
wait. No, I can drink.
I'm
just gonna tell you the secret that while presenting my paper now, I realized that everything that I wrote in the actual paper that I submitted is wrong.
Right.
I'm joking, but my analysis had to be fit. Yeah. So, yeah, which is good because I'll have a chance to do that.
So I want you to clarify what is the analysis, like what is the argument actually? So the picture is that we have maybe everybody knows the line, that it's much higher, but they are taxing much lower. From everybody, it's like a complex of interest that plays to that. Question is, what is the, so this is a reading of reality. I think it could be realistic. No, I guess you did the research, so let's take that. So what is in a way wrong with it? What's the problem from your team?
I wouldn't say I'm not looking for a problem.
Okay.
It's not.
It's not that. You're not a lawyer, right?
So it's not.
It's trying to understand how what's taking place. More descriptive.
But it's more than that, because it's in every evaluation you have some kind of normative assumptions about what should have been, there is a critique around that. It's not only, there is no critique about the situation?
No. First, I answer like the first and second questions. I think that it's a very different type of courts that we did here. It's like professional courts, and they apply to professional standards. It's not like the Army court that doesn't apply to professional standards. At least, and I didn't really study the Army courts, but this is what I know about them. So it's a different kind of justice system, expert-based, and unlike, I would assume I came with the assumption that the Jerusalem Council appraiser can just say whatever number he wants. The Jewish arbitrator will be able to prove, and they, this is how it's going to work. And the fact that the entire discussion is quasi-scientific, and this is something that I didn't show in the presentation, but it's part of the paper. They very radically try to follow the instruction of the standards. So even if they need
which works to the benefit of the Palestinians.
So using such an expert system works at least for the short term, for the benefits of the Palestinians.
That's exactly the question. You describe the situation, which I understand. We ask what are the consequences. So for tax purposes, it works against the municipality.
In church.
But
not necessarily. Actually, even for the short term, it's not necessarily.
Because they can collect these taxes, maybe they would be able to collect higher taxes. But if the municipality wants to appropriate of the state, then the lower value plays in favor of the state. If settlers wants to buy,
this is another market.
It's another market.
What do you mean?
They are paying much higher even than the real price, I guess.
I'm not sure. If the settler wants to buy a house in Sheikh Jarrah.
No.
He can want.
Yeah.
The thing is that
the prices are much higher.
All of virtual markets are no transactions. There's no data because nobody sells properties. It's all like very strange estimation about what would happen if you sell. But basically, they almost don't sell, and if they sell,
themselves, the Palestinians don't sell.
Unofficially,
in the family.
Do not sell.
And if they do, they have this 40 years contract of renting, etc. It's not. It's a different market for us.
No, my question. I have a problem. I see a paradox, maybe, but it's at a normative level anyway. Does it make sense to uniformize standards across all the roads in Jerusalem? And precisely, it's not an open market. How do you identify the potential and the consequences of the buying there in Jerusalem? Palestinian buying. It can, but it doesn't.
Legally.
Yeah, legally, but it never happens.
Sometimes.
No,
Yeah, rarely, but it happens.
What if the Palestinian buys in West Muslim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It does.
no, you need to
It
define.
can happen, but I would argue to find
No, but
the Jerusalem real
they're not
estate
going to
It's
get
not an
funding.
open
It's
market.
not an open
Definitely.
market, definitely. So
It's not Tel Aviv.
it's video. So given that context that it's not an open market, what is the purpose of unification, of standardization?
I honestly don't think anybody
They
ever
should
thought
go
about
together.
that.
They should work together, and if they don't work together.
So when I interviewed appraisers who started to appraise in East Jerusalem, it was only in 1990, and they said that they just did it because they were forced to legal complaints of people in West Jerusalem that were complaining that the government cannot not charge people in East Jerusalem. They have to treat everybody equally. So it was from below. I don't think anybody ever.
But the argument of equality is just nonsense. Just, but I think what your argument is, the basic assumption be standardization does not apply.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It is. It's difficult to apply that context.
Yeah, like the assumptions are not valid.
You know, East and West Jerusalem are very Harat, Givat Tzarfatit.
It's not
The French,
geography, it's
the French hill,
demography, or it's political.
the French hill is east or west for you?
Yes, all it's like
French hill
fingers
is
like
East Jerusalem.
this.
What do you mean? It's occupied from.
I have a
Ramat Eshkol is.
I have
Amon Natsiv, yeah.
I have a footnote in my in the paper that explains that for the purpose of the research, unfortunately, obviously, is our neighborhoods are west, east, and the Jewish neighborhood are west. This is just how the market works. If you go to the French Hill, you'll find a full database of transactions, exactly like any other neighborhood in Tel Aviv. Every transaction is reported. If you go 200 meters to Isauria,
That's a Fafa.
you have two neighborhoods if you want to go into the politics of East Jerusalem. That's Fafa and Shafat, not refugee camps, normal Shafat, as only places in which you have some market and you can find some data.
For instance, so many comparisons, because your study is based on comparables. Let's take the best of because of government information. They are very close. But I'm guessing, I might be wrong, but you never compare between bits of houses and bits of and also.
So they do, but just as they make strange comparisons. They actually compare to Gilo. So they take Gilo values as like the upper limit. So they would argue that the values in Beit Papa can never be higher than Gilo.
Because it works actually the other way.
That's a Fafa. You have fantastic feedback.
Absolutely. Yes.
No, about the bill. I think
But
regarding
they make
what happened in the
comparisons.
last 2 decades, the prices in this but there are different markets. But
What
the
about
question
the
is, what
old
is
city
theoretical,
itself?
what is the analytical diagnosis? This factual.
If you use the word justice, but say it's a different kind of justice. So maybe, how are you using the word justice? Theoretically.
It's an interesting question. You know, as not a firm, not really trying to go to these bottom lines to decide who is what is the political conclusion. I think it's just a very interesting tension. You see the so-called oppressed, standard takers actually taking advantage of the standards They are really happy that there is a visitation of they must visit, but they don't do it, so they take advantage of the cracks in the system, and it's so-called storm, the market standard producer, are actually losing or are not in strong position because they use the standards, even though the Israeli standards and they apply
I
it.
wonder about losing it.
No, so it's very easy to think about because you have this quote from the appraiser in the verdict that says, okay, we want to enforce the regulation on them, etc. But if you look, it doesn't really change. So they're not really making any changes. They don't stay the same for the last 20 years. So they tell themselves for the last 20 years, okay, at least we got something, at least we make them cooperate with the system, but nothing really happens. So it's more the council reasoning for cooperating with the system, and then I don't think that it really necessarily makes an effect.
You have one finding that merits a mention about the theoretical, because one would have expected that because of the impossibility to evaluate rigorously, the debates will be on much bigger range. 100% of the price is demanded by the municipality alone. And you said that it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting story to try to decipher how come. Because the municipality could have said, you know, we evaluated 3,000 and 700, and the debate will be between 300, and they don't do it. So the margins of debate are much smaller than in ordinary or regulated or better ways. And this is a paradox. This is too much we write one paper on this paradox. So I think interesting also from economic theory point of view.
And you sometimes have in so-called normal situations, you have gaps of millions. So it usually goes, let's say, the differences are huge. Here it's indeed very small.
This is, you know, it's, I don't know if there is a theoretical, I'm thinking about that actually. Under valuation. Under valuation.
What's the
But thinking about this Jerusalem
No, but if you know the
in economic terms, it's just missing, it's like part of a larger picture that is not complex than regular complex economic systems because it's not functioning. This is not the rationale that drives not the authorities and not the people.
Indeed. However, when you look at the court cases, at the arbitration process, everybody pretends that it's normal. If you go from outside and they behave and they calculate exactly as if it was interviewed. This is what is so interesting about that.
So it doesn't fit the theory. I mean, sometimes you have to, it's kind of a counterexample. You know, sometimes the findings don't fit our overall theories, and so we change the findings. Here, he hasn't changed the findings, and maybe we have to look at the theories.
What do you mean? Like the overall, I don't know what
No,
the
I mean,
theory is.
no. What
My
I'm saying
analogy
is that it's hard to tell him to change his, you know,
No,
it
it's not that-
is
it's not that that's
interesting.
the interpretation of that, right?
So
It's
how would you
The
interpret
theory
it?
No.
says, the economic theory would say, detach
Yeah.
it from any political context. But if you have less information, the margins of the value will be very high. different estimators.
Right.
And if you have very precise information, then the debate will be 10%. And the finding is exactly
The opposite.
and this begs an explanation.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It begs an explanation.
Because there are other, because it doesn't function as an economic market. It functions
This is
differently.
one possibility. There are specifically with our information.
That they have, but it's totally not according to the information. If they had information, the margins were not here, they were there.
Yeah, if the evaluator for this dealership says this is 3,000, and the municipality evaluates it by 900, and we will now say 700, then who is the stupid?
And they,
I don't know. No, maybe they're not stupid because
They are not
maybe
stupid.
maybe if the municipality would have said 3,000, the evaluator at the end would say 2,500. The people would not pay would not be able to
But
pay the tax.
the considerations are different. I think it's so complex that they cannot even start.
It's a kind of traveler's dilemma. So, the value, the theory is there, I guess.
And your point that context matters.
Context totally matters to understand, but this is the basic assumption of how you analyze them. What is the relevant theory to understand where it lies? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the economic theories.
It's obviously a game.
It's a game with other interests that are not like you cannot compare it to Aviv and not even to Ramat. It's another zone of.
Yeah, but the question is why the municipality is
Ways like that, and my assumption is that the municipality knows the real.
There isn't a real number.
There is a real number, but there is a real number in a way.
No.
There are.
No.
Any questions for the
יש אפילו, אני חושבת על תשובה לגבי המחלקה של הפעם. לגבי לא מחלקה של הפעם.
I was thinking about the power. I mean, who has the power here? The one who has the information usually has the power, and here it seems like the Palestinians have all the power in their hands. They have they know. No, but
They have no power.
they have the information.
No, but this is the magic about it. This is what I try to do. This is my methodology. I try not to think about everything that we know. So I know obviously the political situation, but then I open an arbitration report. We see two sides. You can make it. You can copy and paste it to Tel Aviv. It's going to look exactly the same tables, the same structure. You have a standard how to write this report, and it's a point by point. It looks exactly the same. You see that they repeatedly win according to the same laws.
But
In your article, did you couch it that way? Because that would be,
Court of Justice are.
if you started the article that way, I think it would frame it in a fascinating way. I mean, I didn't read the article, but I think if you start the article with that, then
Good point.
it would make a big difference in terms of how it's read.
Too bad that it's submitted.
No,
Yeah.
you can work on the read.
Questions from
Yeah. I have another question. Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. The pictures that you saw in East Jerusalem are the slums that are constructed in the refugee camps, but there are also palaces in East Jerusalem. And the question whether this logic also applies, or maybe they're not, where options are. What about the beautiful real estates? Do the municipality also say, we know it's 5,000, but we take 900?
Yes.
Yes.
In Sheikh Jarrah is a bit different, but it's really like you go into the very fine details. What you have a lot of embassies or consulates, and you have a lot of official Israeli institutions, banks, etc. So you have some data about this specific area of renting contracts, and which are excessive, because if you have a house and the Belgian consulate want to rent it, you're gonna take data. So you have some data and you have a bit of different dynamic, but it's also the old cities like that. It's not exactly the same.
So maybe it's a socialist policy of the municipality. They want to benefit the poor.
Now, if you want to go to these kind of explanations, and it's something that I'm talking about in the paper, basically the betterment taxes should be reinvested in the area. Then you have a lot of legal discussion. What does it mean the area? Obviously, you could steal some of them, but you cannot collect $1 billion shekels from East Jerusalem and invest all in National. You'll have to invest. You'll have to invest some. But,
לא הם גובים לא פחות מזה,
כן, זה ברור.
You just raise a fascinating point to compare this Jerusalem to the Orthodox neighborhoods.
Wow, I had just to make sure that I'm not completely off. I went and interviewed a few appraisers that specialize in National. It's going to be no, it's not the same. They have not the same. They have other problems. It's going to be a different paper, but basically there's the issue of the multiple contracts. So
partition of
a lot of
properties. Some properties.
Yeah, in National. What do you mean?
There are transactions. But
a lot.
The prices of these transactions are not recorded correctly.
No, 3 contracts. No. The one you show the municipality, the one you show the bank, and the one you show the tax authorities, and the real one. But then you have issues like it's really interesting. I didn't really research it. I just talked to a few people. You have the center with an important rabbi or whatever. So the closest to go to that, you want to live as close to the head of the community. The prices are going up, and you have very interesting politics. And are you allowed to use the Shabbat elevator or not? It changes the price. So. This is a moment when I told my co-writer in the Hebrew University, wow, it's so interesting, and then you have to stop. Focus on East Jerusalem and.
No, I think the comparison could be fascinating, because then you can decipher whether there are political organization or whatever explanation, or the explanation is really that the lack of data, which is, I'm sure, the same in national in the sense of you don't know how much money was paid on transaction.
But then you have a database, but you don't really trust in it.
But you have the database.
Yeah, but it's not.
And you can.
It's not true data.
No, it's also very interesting. Yeah.
But right, and you can use that data and manipulate it. So it's a different question.
He told me the one person that I talked about it with. So I'm not sure. It's not. I don't really know him, but he told me that it used to take 7% off. This is like the old count for reports in the eventually.
as Sasha told me yesterday,
Very nice.
he said Jerusalem is a rich city. Tel Aviv is not. So, thank you very much.